Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 Scottish Open Data Dive Show. Got a lot to get into. I have been deep into the research today, looking for any kind of improvement, to be honest with you, from last year and my performance. We'll get into that and the mixed condition model that I made last year, and it was pretty disappointing. But we got a lot to uncover for tonight and digging into the field for the Scottish Open. But quick announcements here. Mentioned all of these last night, but I'll try to hit those again tonight. Don't forget that this is a double tournament week. So in addition to tonight's show and Wednesday's show for the Scottish Open, there will be a full show for the Barbasol Championship tomorrow evening at 9 p.m. Research, Data Dive, and DFS for the Barbasol will be tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight. So make sure you set your notifications, your reminders. I will be live talking everything Barbasol tomorrow. Wednesday night, I believe Gabe and I are still going to be doing the chat after my show. Was in contact with him a little bit today. We started talking about some analytics, and I completely forgot to ask if he was going to be in chat. So I'll make sure to do that, but we'll have that info for you all come tomorrow, and then especially by Wednesday. But Wednesday night, since we are in Scotland, Wednesday night show is going to be about 2 hours or so before lineups lock, so it's a great opportunity to get your last minute questions in, see the last forecast projection and all of that before the Scottish Open. So make sure you set your reminder for Wednesday night as well, and all of your last minute questions. And then lastly, for this intro, I believe I'm going to try and get on a regular schedule, full week regular schedule, starting in August. I'm going to try. We'll see if the schedule allows it. But we're talking about research in the morning and afternoon, live research if you want to see that and have access to all of the questions that you want throughout the week. Also will be much more laid back, music going. I'll probably play a few games and whatnot as well. And then Friday night, the chill streams, I'm hoping will come back with that. Will come with some showdown lineup constructions and such. Hoping to start that in August. We'll see if schedule allows, but I'm trying to get back onto that regular schedule. And I think I'm going to try to give Kick a chance. Twitch just didn't work for me very well, so we're going to see if I can get some members over on Kick. So if you would like to see some of that or want some more information, reach out to me, and I'll start posting some stuff around my Kick channel here soon. But that is it, I believe, for my announcement. So let's get through the rest of the intro and into the meat and potatoes, if you will, of the show. So all statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter golf gambler and a much better golf DFS player. Go check them out. It's simply well worth your investment. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. This is my Twitter and Instagram, where I will post some research tomorrow around the Barbasol, more so aligning with the Tuesday evening show for the Barbasol. Nothing to do with the Scottish Open, only 1 year of data. So I'm going to feel much more comfortable and confident in the analysis that I provide going to the Barbasol, which, if you haven't seen, the odds came out this morning for the Barbasol, and you've got a lot of value there. The tournament favorite, at least when the odds came out, were 18-1. That's pretty unheard of for a golf tournament to have the tournament favorite at 18-1. So if you're willing to do a little bit of research on an alternate field, you can find a lot of value, especially in the wager market. So if you want to see the research that I do weekly on the PGA Tour, especially for alternate field events when there are 2 tournaments in a week, but every week for the PGA Tour, then give me a follow over at Twitter or Instagram, your preferred social media site. Twitter is also where I post my betting cards weekly for the PGA Tour. That will be no different both this week, the Barbasol and the Scottish Open. So that'll be out Wednesday evening after the DFS Tactics show. And then Twitter is also where I put my quick hitting baseball content. So hopefully that'll be coming back in a regular schedule or regular timing as well. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's Twitter is also in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. I highly suggest you go give Gabe a follow over at Twitter and subscribe to his article. We talked a little bit today, talking about some analytics. We've worked closely for the past 2 or 3 months. I've had some good success working together. When you get two analytic minds, that generally happens. So consider giving him a follow over at Twitter and subscribing to his article. And if you subscribe, you are going to be able to join us in his Substack chat that happens every Wednesday night before the tournament of the week, and some more DFS talk and whatnot. So consider giving him a follow over there. And then lastly, for the intro, we are live. Chat is open. Again, want to hear from you all. Have you made any wagers for the Scottish? You can throw in any Barbasol questions you have. I will get to those, or at least a high-level view of those if you wish. But that'll be mainly reserved for tomorrow. But what are you thinking of the prices for the Scottish Open? Again, have you made any wagers? Who are your early pivots, your early fades, all of that good stuff? What do you know of the Renaissance Club and all of that? So let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2023 Scottish Open. And we're going to start, as we always do on a Monday evening, with the Wind Finder forecast. And I believe my camera's centered, or at least centered enough. A little bit of a change from last night's forecast, and that's been the theme today at least, is that this forecast has changed fairly consistently throughout today, and I imagine that's going to be the same throughout the week. So it's something that we're definitely going to want to pay attention to moving forward this week, and to see if there is a favorable half of the draw, as generally Open Championships and last year the Scottish Open did have extreme favorable draws, meaning AM PM or PM AM. So we're definitely going to want to keep that in mind moving forward this week. But you see, Thursday looks pretty even, at least for now. No super forecast available just yet, but fairly windy. I would say calm for North Berwick this time of year, but windy by American standards. Friday looks immaculate. Very little wind, maybe a little rain later in the day, but not a lot going on there, just chilly, high of 60. And then Saturday and Sunday looks like a wash, to be honest with you. But again, this forecast has changed quite a bit even throughout today. So keep this in mind as you are moving forward this week, is that you'll have to have the capability to maneuver, to pivot at seemingly a moment's notice, and that's why Wednesday's show will be pretty helpful, being so close to lineup lock, is that we'll check the weather again at the beginning of the show. But there's a look at the forecast right now for the Scottish Open. We're going to close that out. We're going to move to Fantasy National, do a couple of reviews, if you will, from last night, or quick hitting high-level overviews, and then get straight into last year's leaderboard, as it's the only data we have, but I think it's probably going to give us a good idea of how the Renaissance Club will play. One other field change has happened as well since last night. MJ Duffy has withdrawn, or has decided to play the Barbasol Championship, and that puts Troy Merritt in the field so far for the Scottish Open. So the players that have withdrawn from the Scottish Open: George Coetzee, I'm probably butchering that, but George Coetzee, Andrew Novak, Vincent Norman, Harry Higgs, Chad Ramey, Austin Smotherman, Paul Haley, Marty Doe or Zai-Ching Do, Mark Hubbard, and MJ Duffy. Mark Hubbard's the only one of those 10 that I don't think is playing the Barbasol. I know 8 of them are for sure playing the Barbasol, and we'll see that tomorrow night in the Barbasol show. But make sure if you have submitted lineups or are thinking about wagers or early lineups and all that those 10 players are not in your considerations, and they have been starred here. Make sure these 10 are out of your considerations. They are not playing the Scottish Open. Okay, with that, let's do a couple of quick recaps here. We just looked at Windfinder. Very high potential for some wins, as you would expect from a links style course. So, as soon as Fantasy National decides to cooperate, I will back this out to the beginning of 2022, and our top performers in moderate and windy conditions in the past 18 months or so. Justin Thomas, Sung Jae, Scotty Scheffler, Xander, Matt Fitzpatrick, Rory, Max Homa, Shane Lowry, Sam Burns, and Jordan Spieth. Something else that we took a quick look at last night is scoring difficult to par. This is a bit more subjective and dependent on the weather conditions. If the forecast holds for what we just saw in Windfinder, I don't actually think it would play all that difficult. Now, it could play difficult Saturday and Sunday with the rain and chilly and all that stuff. But overall, based on that forecast, I don't know if it would play difficult. I just don't think it'll play easy. I don't think the winds are going to be calm enough for the course to be extremely gettable. It has played gettable in the past. I believe Wiesberger won in 2019 at a score of minus 21 or so, which would put it in the easy category. But again, Xander wins last year at minus 7. It's all going to be dependent on that forecast. I'm going to go with difficult for this evening, and again, a big reason why I am going to be so in tune with the forecast, as that's going to change how the course is going to play. But if the Renaissance Club does indeed play difficult, your top performers in the past 18 months in rounds that have been difficult have been Scotty Scheffler, Rory, Matt Fitzpatrick, Victor Hovland, Wyndham Clark, Shane Lowry, Xander, Max Homa, Tommy Fleetwood, and Patrick Cantlay. So there's a couple of quick looks and quick overviews or whatnot. Going to bring this to 2023. And let's go ahead and just jump straight to last year's leaderboard and the statistics from last year's leaderboard. And they're a little bit incomplete. I mentioned this last night in Microsoft Excel. No shot link. We were only able to gather certain things. So I only bring this up to show you that we don't have any individual strokes gained, say off the tee approach, around the green, and putting. I'll get this set for birdies and bogeys, but let's take a look at it and think about this in a few different ways. This is a par 70, measures close to 7,300 yards, so it's a very long par 70. Now, you might think that distance would be a factor if the course is long by its par standards. The Renaissance Club, from my understanding, has a lot of rollout, typically plays a little bit firmer and faster. And the reason why the scores were so difficult last year is that the softness really affected the course, made it play extremely long. If that rain does not come until the weekend, then I'm thinking that the course is going to play a lot shorter, will be a little bit easier. The fairways, you have some fairways that are pretty hard to hit and some that are very generous. Not unlike LA Country Club for the U.S. Open, from what I have gathered and read and heard and all that. So I don't know how much off the tee is going to factor in. I think it'll be a little bit, but I'm more so focused on something else in the driving and greens, fairways page view than just straight off the tee. So let's just take a look at strokes gained approach this calendar year for the players that are playing over in Scotland. Our top strokes gained approach players this calendar year: Scotty Scheffler, Xander, Ricky Fowler, Wyndham Clark, Alex Smalley, Gary Woodland, Tom Hoge, Rory, Corey Connors, and Max Homa. Strokes gained approach is going to be a part of the mixed condition model. It always is. It just kind of depends on the percentage of how much. But I do believe strokes gained approach is going to be somewhere in there this week. Credit to Gabe for the next two things that we're going to look at here. If indeed the course is going to play difficult and the greens, even though they are large, are fairly difficult to hit, then you're going to want to look at around the green, and that didn't really cross my mind as opposed to scrambling. Just looking at scrambling game. But even if this does play easier, it's not a guarantee that the players are going to hit the green. So around the green is going to be a factor, and some of that can be chipping, but some of it can also be putting. And we're going to talk about putting here in a little bit, but let's talk about around the green. You can absolutely look at it with long rough. You can look at it difficult if you think the Renaissance Club is going to be difficult. I'm actually not going to use any filter. And the reason why I'm not going to use the long rough filter, at least my thought process right now, is that around the green, especially with English style or link style golf, around the green can be simply putting from off the green, and that's not long rough. You know, whether you're putting from a collection area or the fairway, and you can say that about any tournament, sure, but it's really prominent in link style golf, and that's why I'm not terribly confident, or I'm not sold that I need to use or should use the long rough filter. So your top around the green players this calendar year with no filter, just simply around the green: Brendan Todd, Scotty Scheffler, Aaron Baddeley, Matthias Schwab, Ben On, Alex Noren, Padraig Harrington, Harry Hall, Ricky Fowler, and Justin Thomas. Brendan Todd, a great short game, saw that at the John Deere. Scotty Scheffler, all-world player, number one. Everything's lining up for him very well. Baddeley's always had a great short game. Alex Noren, Padraig Harrington, Harry Hall, these European players generally have very good short games. So hopefully the reasoning or my thought process and my reasoning explains why I'm not using the long rough, at least for the moment. And I could be wrong. I could be convinced to use it. Would be interested to hear your take in the community, so put it in chat or put it in the comments. But as of right now, I'm just kind of thinking about looking at around the green in general, especially since with link style golf, putting from off the green is such a prominent thing, and you're not putting if you're in long rough, or very rarely are you using putter when you're in the long rough. The last bit here in the strokes gained category is, I mentioned last night that I thought these would play akin to bent. The technical surface type is still fescue on the greens here at the Renaissance Club. We don't have fescue as a green type or green surface. But what we can say with almost 100% certainty is that these greens are very, very slow. They are kept at slow speeds due to the winds, because if they were kept any faster, players would not be able to keep their ball at rest to putt. You see the relative lack of amount of rounds, especially in 2023 here. 10 is the top. So instead of only going back to 2022, I'm going to go all the way back to 2019, which, again, coincidentally is the first year that the Renaissance Club hosted the Scottish Open, but 2019 more so is the furthest back that I go in my analysis for any tournament. Even going back as far as 2019, the most rounds you have is 35, and that's a little bit deceiving, as if we actually check on these 35 rounds from Tyler Duncan, you see the majority of these don't even have putting statistics. Corrales, Mayakoba, Bermuda, Puerto Rico, places, again, that are international, don't have shot link. So even though Tyler Duncan has 35 rounds listed on slow greens, we only have the putting statistics for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Only 9 of the 35 do we actually have the strokes gained putting for those tournaments. The tournaments that are going to have these slow greens, the Tournament of Champions has a decent chance of having slow greens. The Valero Texas Open makes a lot of sense because of all the wind in Texas. The Valero, again, there might be one other one that has Velcro speed greens that is stateside. I'm forgetting it, but it's mainly the Valero and the Tournament of Champions. So be aware of that, especially if you're a member at Fantasy National, that these rounds are a little bit misleading. We saw Tyler Duncan. I'll click on Seamus Power for another example. He only has 5 rounds of his 29 with actual strokes gained putting. Pebble Beach. There you go. So the Pebble Beach has a decent chance of having a Velcro green speed factor as well. But what we can say for these greens at the Renaissance Club is that they're going to be slow. So whatever little data there is, it's at least worth looking at to see who putts on slow greens well, as that has been a topic of some of the American players when they play at the Open Championships, is that they really struggle to adjust to the speed of these greens. It's just a different style of game than American golf. Now, I don't know how much I'm going to put in strokes gained putting in my mixed condition model, but I'm going to have a putting factor into it. I'll explain that when we get to the putting tab or putting page view. But for your research and your informational purposes, the top putters on Velcro speed greens going back to 2019 have been Lee Hodges, Andrew Putnam, Nico Echeverria, Chesson Hadley, Jordan Spieth, JT Poston, S.H. Kim, Ben Taylor, Justin Rose, Xander Schauffele, and Patrick Cantley. So it is comforting to see somebody like Jordan Spieth, who has a very, very successful track record at the Open Championship. 8th, 2nd, 20th, 9th, 1st, 30th. Very good success at the Open, where generally they have very slow greens. Somebody like Justin Rose has a lot of success, or has put Velcro speed greens well on the PGA Tour. His success at the Open Championship, 46th, 20th, 2nd, 54th, a 6th. He's missed the cut, but also has a 13th and a 12th. Has these success at the Open Championship, and we'll see what they did last year at the Scottish. It's comforting to see the correlation there, at least, between some of these players and the slow greens. Again, I don't think I'm going to use strokes gained putting Velcro filter in my mixed condition model, but at least the research isn't leading us astray. There might be a few players that don't have correlation, or maybe haven't played the Open Championship very well, but again, seeing Spieth and Justin Rose and Xander and Patrick Cantley, these players that have generally played the Open Championship pretty well, seeing them have or rise on this strokes gained putting Velcro green list is at least comforting and inspiring a little bit of confidence to look at it. So there's a look at a few of the strokes gained statistics for the Scottish and what we can discern, or at least with any reason discern, especially since we don't have strokes gained data. But let's go ahead and move into some more of the more detailed data. And I spent last night talking about how if the course is going to play difficult, you're going to want to focus on bogey avoidance. And that's certainly true if the course plays difficult. But even with it playing difficult last year, and we can confirm this is last year's tournament history conditions, or course conditions, every single round played to difficult. Look at these birdies gained. Xander, Kurt Kitayama, Cameron Tringale, Jamie Donaldson. They were much more in the birdies gained. Bogey avoidance, Tom Kim, Patrick Cantlay to a lesser extent, Tommy Fleetwood. It was an even kind of split between players that favored the birdies and players that favored the bogeys. What I can tell you right now is that I mentioned that double bogey avoidance might be something. Again, it's another tournament where it doesn't seem like it's a huge deal. So, not going to be taking a big look at double bogey avoidance, just bogeys. And I can confidently say that we don't want to look at eagles. That's not true for the Barbasol. But for the Scottish, we don't want to look at eagles. So if we sort on these two metrics, the extreme top portion of the birdies gained, 2nd, 10th, 1st, 6th, 6th, very, very strong. Very strong. But it does lose a little bit of its strength not too much further down. You got a couple of miscuts, pretty high in the birdies gained. 30th is the worst performance before those miscuts. So, fairly strong, but extremely strong up top. Whereas if we focus or sort on the bogeys avoided, not as strong up top. You do have 3rd, 4th, 16th, 10th, 24th. So you can see more double-digit numbers and higher double-digit finishes from the bogeys avoided. But what you also don't see is those miscuts from the leaders in the bogeys avoided. My thought process right now is still to lean bogey avoidance. But as the forecast changes, and if you think that the Renaissance Club will play easier, the easier you think it's going to play, the more you need to lean into the birdies gained, because this course can yield some low scores. Again, Wiesberger, 21 or so under. There's been an 18 under. Birdies are out there if the course is gettable. Bogeys are out there in plenty if the weather conditions don't cooperate. So we'll take a look at both this evening. And it all depends on how you feel the course is going to play. I'll bring this back into 2022, I suppose. We'll start with what I originally thought, and it might not be correct by the time we get to Wednesday night and the forecast has changed so much. But if the Renaissance Club does indeed play difficult, I need to remove another filter. There we go. I had the Velcro speed filter on still. All right. If the Renaissance Club does indeed play difficult, your top bogey avoiders in rounds that are difficult the past 18 months, Scottie Scheffler, Matt Fitzpatrick, Rory, Shane Lowry, Xander, Wyndham Clark, Tommy Fleetwood, Patrick Cantlay, Brendan Todd, and Tom Hoge. Again, these major champions, Scheffler and Fitzpatrick. Shane Lowry loves open link-style golf. Wyndham Clark, Xander's always a factor generally in major championships. Patrick Cantlay. These players are adept at avoiding bogeys, especially when it gets difficult. If the forecast is favorable this week, And I don't know if I would feel comfortable looking at easy, but the easier it gets, the more you want to look at the birdies gained. Your top birdies gained players went around as easy in the past 18 months. Patrick Cantlay, Justin Thomas, Tom Kim, Rory, Davis Riley, Scotty Scheffler, Xander, Tom Hoge, Ricky Fowler, and Taylor Montgomery. So again, just be aware, keep the forecast for North Berwick in the forefront of your mind as you are starting to think about your wagers, your player pools for your lineups, in the sense that the weather will really, really dictate how easy or difficult the Renaissance Club will play. All right, let's move into some driving and fairway and green statistics. So I'll get that set for this year's field. We'll move to the fairways and greens page view. We'll highlight the top 23 here or so, just convenient for ties. Distance, more players were positive in distance than negative, but none of these numbers, with the exception of maybe Thomas Detry with an 88, are really all that high. Most of the players that were negative, maybe with the exception of Jason Scrivener last year, weren't really all that negative. They were pretty darn similar. And that's what you'll get a lot of times with link style golf, is that players are having to use long irons or maybe fairway woods. They generally end up relatively in the same position unless they find a bunker or a little bit offline and find the rough and gorse and all that stuff. You see, fairways last year really weren't all that big of a factor. Even though they were difficult to hit, they weren't really all that much if you sort on it. Decent cut making. Yeah, Tom Kim, very high up here in fairways gained, but that's kind of his MO anyway. But you got a lot of miscuts, Neesmith and Rye and Scheffler and Keegan. Not a terribly big factor last year. Distance, much the same. You got some cut making. Kurt Kitayama, finished runner-up last year, pretty high in distance. But you also got your fair share of miscuts. List, Borberg, Rogers. So neither of those two are a big deal, at least in the 1 year of data that we have. And that's why I don't think off the tee is going to matter a whole lot this week. Instead, I think what we're going to be looking at is good drives gained. Good evening, P. Thanks for jumping in chat. Hopefully you have a good week and are ready for a double tournament week, the Scottish Open and the Barbasol. We were in your state last week. We are reciprocating the favor, although technically I'm not in Kentucky. I am basically in the metro area of Kentucky, of a bigger city in Kentucky. So Barbasol is the closest PGA tournament to me. I think it's only about an hour away, really. Hopefully you have a good week. How was your John Deere? Haven't heard from you on that end. Hopefully it was a lot better than mine. And are ready for 2 weeks of double tournaments. Instead, I think this week, and it makes a lot of sense for link style golf, is that you're going to want to look at good drives gained. And a good drive gained, defined by Fantasy National, is a player has hit the fairway or they hit the green in regulation if they had to play out of the rough. You don't want to look at greens necessarily because these greens are large, and while they can be difficult to hit, especially with the wind, they're large. I believe the number that I have seen for the Renaissance Club is about 7,000 square feet, which would be on some of the larger greens on the PGA Tour. Barely played last week. You should definitely go to the Barbasol if it's only an hour. I mean, I would love to. Life, schedule, my own baseball season is rolling around. I've got a wedding to go to this weekend, so unfortunately it doesn't look like I'll be able to make it. But it is on the radar, and friends of mine have actually pondered slightly, but the idea has been thrown out to play in the Pro-Am Scramble down there once. So it's been on the radar. But I think good drives gained is going to be the way you want to look at this week, because you're going to want to be the fairway with this link style golf. And if you're in the gorse and in the rough, see if you're able to still hit the green. And you see, when we sort on good drives gained, some fairly strong correlation here. 10th, top 25, top 5, top 10, top 10. Your winner, fairly high up here as well. A pretty high miscut from Luke List, but he is a ball striker, so that's kind of his thing. I like the idea of good drives gained. If we sort on greens, you've got a lot of correlation here, seemingly. Not a lot of miscuts, but if guys are generally hitting their irons, hitting greens a lot, they should be at least making the cut. Again, I really like this good drives gained statistic. Now, where I am struggling with myself as I've been looking at all of the metrics and thinking about filters and whatnot, especially since we don't know if or what the weather forecast is going to be this far away from the start of the Scottish Open. Do we want to look at good drives gained in the wind? Could be something that seemingly would make some sense. Do we want to look at good drives gained in long rough? Since we know if you're off the fairway, generally on these link style courses, it gets gnarly quick. I don't know. So put it in chat, put it in the comments what you think would be a good filter, if any, for the good drives gained metric. Right now, I am just thinking about looking at good drives gained in general, and I'll be thinking more about it throughout tomorrow and Wednesday as the forecast updates. You know, if it gets difficult, then I would probably lean towards good drives gained. Difficult, good drives gained in the wind would seem to make some sense as well. We'll have to see. But in general, this calendar year, with no filters, just your flat out top good drives gained players in the field for the Scottish Open: Scotty Scheffler, Aaron Rai, Matthew Neesmith, Patrick Cantlay, Terrell Hatton, Corey Connors, Tom Kim, Shane Lowry, Tyler Duncan, Xander Schauffele, and Doug Ghim. So we've had quite a bit of overlap with some of these players on the bogey avoidance, birdies gained, some short game players. Aaron Rai has won this tournament. He won in 2020? 2021 maybe? I know he's a champion here. Of course, our defending champion has been on most of these filters and metrics. Xander. Shane Lowry, an Open champion winner, loves link style golf. Bernd Wiesberger, who I don't think is in the field this week. No, he is not. So he's a champion here at the Renaissance Club. Different styles of play can play here, absolutely. But I still think this good drives gained and the players that have overlapped quite a bit. Tom Kim was up there for birdies gained when it's easy. So the easier it gets, more you might want to think about Tom Kim. Shane Lowry's been up here a lot. Xander's been up here a lot. Cantlay seemingly been up here a lot. Local dudes, Ghim and Hardy did well last week. They did. They absolutely did. I was nowhere near Doug Ghim. Nick Hardy rated out well. I was a little less confident in it, but man, they played well. And really, Nick Hardy, I don't think Nick Hardy had really played all that well since the Zurich. I don't believe. I could be mistaken on that. I thought he was in this field. Is he at the Barbasol? But Doug Ghim, we can definitely check. He's been in good form. Doug Ghim's been in pretty good form. Top 20 the Byron Nelson, top 15, middling at the Rocket Mortgage, but on a birdie fest like that, and he even gained strokes putting. Like if his putter, you see the past 5-10 events, if his putter is even field average, generally speaking, he is an all-world ball striker if his putter's even field average, he's going to contend, and that's what he's done lately. He's not great in the wind. He prefers an easier tournament, so if it does get difficult, could be an issue for him, or at least from a surface level view. But he's in great form. I cannot deny your local boy there in that he's been playing well. There's a look at good drives gained in general. I think if indeed the wind picks up, it would make some sense to look at good drives gained potentially in windy conditions. So we'll have to back this out to the beginning of 2022. Your top good drives gained players in windy conditions, moderate and windy conditions. The past 18 months: Corey Connors, Shane Lowry, Xander, Sungjae, Aaron Rai, Tom Hoagie, Gary Woodland, Matthew Neesmith, Kevin Streelman, and Doug Ghim. Paul Haley is starred. He is playing the Barbasol. He is not at the Scottish Open. But again, some more overlap here. Shane Lowry, Xander, Aaron Rai now's popped a few times. Doug Ghim's been up there now. So there's a list of the players, at least in terms of tee and approach, without strokes gained approach, that you might want to consider in the way that their game translates pretty well to open or links style golf. All right, let's take a look at proximity, and I always have a fun time thinking about proximity. I always debate with myself. I have the open talk with you all seemingly every week. Here's the issue with proximity this week. Notice last year we don't have any metrics from 75 to 100. Okay, that would signify, at least based on this, that nobody had an approach from 75 to 100 yards. That's completely incorrect. Almost half of the approach shots came from 0 to 75. So therein lies some of my issue with some of this data, is that we don't have 75 to 100. We get a lot of approaches from 0 to 75. Here's the 75 to 100. Again, proximity I don't think is going to play a big part. If it does, I think it's because the winds have laid down and the par 5s are gettable. Because if we sort on this proximity, I mean, we see the winner was negative in terms of total procs. If we sort on the total procs, miscuts all over the place here in terms of performance, in terms of total procs. The top 23 or so, very few of them were positive in terms of total procs. You had a few good performers: Kurt Kitayama, Cameron Chingali, Spieth, certainly. But it wasn't that big of a deal. And we don't have the 0 to 75. The reason why I say that if the winds lie down and the course plays easy, the reason why I think the 200 plus is going to, even when it was difficult last year and the par 5s weren't really attackable, no, this isn't the strongest correlation, but you don't have a lot of miscuts very high in terms of 200 plus procs. And this is what you would think for the par 5s. You would think this on the long par 4s at the Renaissance Club. Your winner was fairly high in 200 plus procs. You had a third, a 10th. The easier it plays, the more I'm going to think about putting 200 plus in my mixed condition model. Because if we sort on the rest of these, a bunch of miscuts pretty high up here in the 100 to 125. You got a pretty high miscut, decent cut makers, but nothing elite in terms of finishes there. 150 to 175, very, very strong at the top, but then falls off very quickly with all these missed cuts. So you could maybe argue 150 to 175, would make some amount of sense, as there are a few shorter par 4s. And the par 4s 450 to 500. You've got some 460s and such in there with all the rollout. It's not unreasonable, but still thinking the 200 plus would be the best. The easier it gets. Now, the harder it gets, I don't think I'm going to use any procs, or the harder I perceive it getting, I don't think I would use 200 plus procs. So for the players in the field this week, I will back this bring this into 2023. If the Scottish Open and Renaissance Club does indeed play easy, your top 200 plus approach players this calendar year: Tom Kim, Tom Hoge, Justin Rose, Victor Hovland, Eric Cole, Rory, Justin Suh, Charlie Hoffman, Scott Stallings, and Scotty Scheffler. So again, a little bit of a holding pattern here, as we have to see what the final forecast is going to be, how we think the Renaissance Club is going to play this week. But the easier it plays, I think the more I would want to factor in 200 plus, to factor in the par 5 scoring, the long par 4s, which there are a few here, 5 in between 450 and 500. And your par 5s, the longest is at 600. That's why it's in this bucket, but I would say all 3 fall into this range here. So something to think about, and that's why I've stressed it a couple times. I'm going to keep reiterating it. You're going to want to keep on top of the forecast this week as you think about your player pool and your wagers. All right, let's move to par 3s, 4s, and 5s very, very quickly. Par 3s, we saw last night that it didn't matter in terms of the data and in the graphs, which does not make a lot of sense to me, because there are 5 of them here at the Renaissance Club. Now, Xander didn't play them all that well. He was okay. In your top 23, not really anybody terrible with the exception of Fitzpatrick. You got a lot of zeros here, and that's just because they're getting rounded. They were slightly negative. I think they're going to be a little bit bigger of a deal than what the graphs showed last night in Fantasy National, because if we sort on them, 3rd, 10th, like you have some cut making up here with some elite finishes. Now your winner's a little bit further down, but you do have strong performances here, just not elite. What you won't see is any particular range. You only have one par 3 that measures to this length. You only have one that measures to this length. You don't have any on the scorecard that measures to here, but yeah, that's one of the higher numbers. You got a 2.9. I think this was a 3, 3.3. They're all been in the same general vicinity, 200 to 225. This is where the most of the par 3s come. It's been the highest number. It's also got the most correlation in terms of a lack of missed cuts, but it hasn't been so important that it warrants looking at by itself. And then the 225 plus is only a 1.4. And in fact, they only moved the par 3s that long on the weekend once the cut had been established. So I'm thinking it's just par 3s in general. But I think it's going to be a little bit more important than what the graphs showed last night, especially for Xander. So, with that, your top par 3 performers. Again, there are 5 of them here at the Renaissance Club. They're going to have a say in who plays well this week. Your top par 3 performers this calendar year: Sam Burns, Ricky, Max Homa, Scotty Scheffler, Sam Ryder, Eric Cole, Ben Griffin, Nikolai Højgaard, Christian Bezuidenhout, and Shane Lowry. Moving to par 4s. And again, we'll see that they're going to carry some weight. Only one player was negative in terms of par 4 performance. But you don't have huge numbers here. I've seen tournaments recently that had 13s and 12s. There's a lot of strong correlation, so you absolutely want to factor them in. But these numbers aren't as high as what you would see from some other tournaments on par 4s. Say the John Deere last week. I believe the Rocket Mortgage had a pretty high par 4 value for their winners. Important, definitely going to want to use them, but might have a little bit less in terms of overall in the mixed condition model. If we sort, again, the drivable, semi-drivable par 4 didn't apparently even play under 350 last year. If we sort 350 to 4, not really. 4 to 450 is only a 3 and had no correlation. 450 to 5 is where the majority of the par 4s fall here. It's the strongest correlation, but you still have a couple of miscuts, fairly high, got some clunkers and some middlings. Don't see it as a huge deal. And then 5.7, this has actually been the highest number and perhaps the most correlating for elite finishes. But you only have 1, maybe 2 that measure to this on the scorecard. So it's looking like it's just going to be par 4. So our top par 4 performers this calendar year at the Scottish Open: Scotty Scheffler, Tyrrell Hatton, Patrick Cantlay, Xander, Victor Hovland, Rory, Wyndham Clark, Adam Scott, Ricky Fowler, and Max Homa. Again, the list of your major champions. This is why par 4s are just a big deal. Majority of the holes on PGA Tour are par 4s. Wyndham Clark and Xander, Scotty Scheffler. Cantlay's always a factor. Victor's seemingly always a factor. So, going to be a decent factor, but I don't see anything in terms of a specific length. In the par 5s, while I came into this, as I started my research today, thinking that I was just going to look at 550 to 600, Xander played them well, but look, he played the 600 to 650 the best. If we sort, again, you're going to have to play the par 5s well. It's the best scoring opportunities you have. So they're going to carry a bit of weight. 550 to 6, this is where the majority of the par 5s fall on the scorecard. Again, decent correlation. No cut making, or no miscuts, I should say. Decent correlation, but only a 2.2 versus 600 to 650 has a 5.2. You do have a miscut fairly high, but your winner is 3rd up here. So, looking like it's probably just par 5s. So our top par 5 performers in the field this week at the Scottish Open: Patrick Cantlay, Ricky Fowler, Scotty Scheffler, Wyndham Clark, Jordan Spieth, Ludwig Aberg, Tommy Fleetwood, Sungjae, Davis Thompson, Andrew Putnam, and Justin Rose. So a few new names there. Davis Thompson. Putnam, we might have said one other time. Ludwig Aberg. Let's see. Sungjae, maybe up there a couple times, but a couple of new names there. All right. That's going to do it for the Fantasy National portion. Let's go to Microsoft Excel very, very quickly. We're going to start with my atrocious, absolutely atrocious mixed condition model from last year. I was just flat out wrong on everything. You see, I've still got this sorted from the leaderboard last year. That's just to show you the performance or the averages here. So I went down to the top 29. Again, that's just convenient for ties. I went to the top 29. But in terms of results of this mixed condition model, the worst one that I have seen, just as honest as I can be, I had 11 of my top 20 miss the cut. Just unacceptable. Xander, coming off his win, he was in great form, so it made a lot of sense. But Scheffler and Hideki and JT, Mito, Victor, Will Zalatoris, 11 of my top 20 missed the cut. And except for Xander, Fitzpatrick, who was still popular, and Cam Smith, who was popular, even the players that made the cut weren't even all that great of finishes. 61st. Now, Max Homa was a top 20. That was acceptable. John Rahm, Kirk, Burns, just not a good result-based mixed condition model. 15% in strokes gained approach. I'll probably back that down a little bit, but with no strokes gained data, it's just where I default. Strokes gained approach is the most important shot type, in my opinion, in golf. I have 15% in total procs. I think that was an error. We talked about that this evening. So 15% that is incorrect. I'll be getting back. 15% in par fours. I did single out the par fours. We'll see how predictive those were. I had 10% in fairways gained, moderate and windy conditions. Okay. We looked at good drives gained potentially in the wind. So I was on at least a similar thought process, but looks like I might be using a different metric. We'll see how predictive this was. Foreshadowing, it wasn't. Par threes, par fives, I had a 10% each. I did split out the 550 to 600 at 5%, and I split out the 200 to 225 par threes. We'll see that those weren't very predictive. I also will get 10% back between these. Easy to par and moderate and windy. Again, I was wrong because I thought the Renaissance Club was going to play easy. It ended up playing extremely difficult. One of the most difficult tournaments on the PGA Tour. So, in terms of predictability, strokes gained approach, fairly solid at a 49. The best, actually, was performance in the wind. 40.4. Even though the tournament didn't play easy last year, your top strokes gained total players when it was easy actually was the second most predictive metric from last year's mixed condition model. But the best was strokes gained total, moderate and windy conditions. Other very strong performing metrics, just par fours in general. Makes a lot of sense. Par threes, par fives were pretty solid. They're a little bit better than strokes gained approach. Sand saves was pretty good. I don't know how much I feel about sand saves. What was not predictive, we'll see, one of the worst ones. The length of the par threes. The length of the par fives. Not as bad as the par threes, but still above a 50. Fairways gained in windy conditions was just not a thing. It just wasn't very good. Worst one so far. Proximity wasn't great. So a lot to improve upon, absolutely, from last year's mixed condition model. A lot to improve on, and I've seen enough in this mixed condition model that I can change. If I was looking at these same metrics, I would be quite concerned. But I think there's enough difference here from what I'll be using that I have some reason for some cautious optimism on some improvement, because that's just unacceptable. That's just bad. 11 of 20 of my top 20 missed the cut. All right, so there's last year's mixed condition model. We'll have to be better than that this year. Close that out. We're going to end the show with, normally it's the early look file, but again, this has only happened 1 year, so we went through the prior leaderboard. That would be the early look file. Instead, let's take a look at some of these specific metrics and the data from the players that finished in the top 30 across here. See, distance, fairways, they did not matter. They were very, very little in terms of importance, especially the fairways. That's why I like this good drives gain. This is a big number. We will scroll over to that tab. Distance and fairways, not, they're negative in terms of, or in relation to full field course, consistent courses. But look at good drives gained, 32%. More important. So that's why I'm really leaning into the good drives gained. And greens is a part of the good drives gained. So I'm leaning to the good drives gained. We look at scoring. Again, this was based on last year, and it was difficult. You wanted the bogey avoidance. But the easier that you see the Renaissance Club play this year, the more you're going to want to look into the birdies gained. It all is dependent on the wind. But at least for last year, Bogey avoidance was more important. Birdies gained were almost a quarter less important than other full field course averages. So we'll see. Par threes, you'll see important. Not every single course has a 0 to 150 par three, so don't get caught up in the particular length here or this big number. Again, statistically it says 200 to 225, but this is the reason why I like to come into the raw detail. Look, last year, the 175 to 200, which does not have a par 3 in its length on the scorecard, actually was, by the slightest of margins, more significant than the 200 to 225. And even so, it is still less than a third making up of the entirety of the strokes gained par 3. That's why I'm just going to be using strokes gained par 3, but I'm going to be having some decent amount of weight, probably 10%, maybe 15%, depending on how the rest of the mixed condition falls, or mixed condition model falls. But no particular length, even though there are 3 that fall 200 to 225, you see last year the significance was fairly low for those lengths of par 3s. So we're going to look at total par 3s. Par 4s, again, fairly important. Saying 11% less than the average full field course. Okay. But the majority of your holes fall here. 1.86 is a decently high number. Again, it is about 33% of this total par 4s. That's why I don't feel that they warrant looking at by themselves. We'll just look at par 4s. And par 5s, the reason why I'm not looking at 600 to 650 by themselves is that technically only one falls into here and it's right at 600. But you see, last year, all of the weight for the par 5s came from 600 to 650. So they were clearly doing things with the tees and the pins and moving the yardages around. I don't think I feel comfortable looking at 600 to 650 by itself. Now, if this year's Scottish Open has extreme importance in the 600 to 650 again, then we've established a pattern and we'll do that for next year's Scottish Open. But on 1 year data, I think I'm just going to look at strokes gained par 5 in totality. And then lastly, for proximities, I mean, look, prox total was negative. All of these numbers are extremely small. We don't even have the 75 to 100, so I don't feel great about anything with prox total, or prox in general, total or otherwise. All right, I was going to say that's the end of the show. I remembered that there was something specific that I wanted to look at with you all in terms of putting. So I'm going to end the show off coming back to Fantasy National. And the reason why I forgot is because we never go to this page view seemingly. But we talked about how these greens are going to be slow. They are generally very, very slow. They keep it that way because of the wind in the UK. Well, slow greens generally mean 3 putts. So the one putting factor or metric that I know I'm going to have in my mixed condition model, I did this for the Open Championship. We see this from last year's Scottish Open. 3 putts per round were a pretty big factor. So again, take this with a little bit of a grain of salt because there aren't a whole lot of rounds here. Like Andrew Putnam, looks like he only has 9 putting rounds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of his 21. Only 9 of his 21 actually have strokes gained putting data to them. But your top 3 putt avoiders on slow greens going back to 2019. Andrew Putnam, Jordan Spieth, Jimmy Walker, Keith Mitchell, Bo Hostler, Rory, Patrick Cantlay, Justin Thomas, Eric Cole, Brandon Wu. There's your top 10 3-putt avoiders going back to 2019 because there are so few rounds. But that's going to do it for the Data Dive show tonight. I will bring you back to the strokes gained page view, bring it to this calendar year, and let you have a look there as we close out the show. P, thanks for jumping in chat like you always do when you are able to catch a show. Good talking to you. Hopefully you'll be able to make the Barbasol show tomorrow and Wednesday night's DFS Tactics. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, and supports the channel. Always appreciated. Love what I do. Looking at in-depth sports statistics, trying to win a little bit of money in the process. Reminder that tomorrow will be the full Barbasol Championship show. There are 2 tournaments this week, so I will be covering the Barbasol Championship in its entirety, research, data, and DFS tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight. So I hope to see you there. Thanks again for all the support. We're reaching close to 100 subscribers, which I understand is not very much, but I am very thankful for the support that I have gotten. It really does mean a lot. I enjoy what I do, and I'm glad that you all enjoy the content that I put out. For all the wagers that you have made so far this week for the Scottish Open, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Scottish Open, and until I see you tomorrow night for the Barbasol full show, may all your bets be profitable.